Alright, a few disclaimers. So, when I watched this video, I decided to abort the English version of the GameStar video because it actually wasn't that interesting in the first place. So, this is a replacement of it. Don't worry though, I have suffered for this decision, as you're about to see. Anyway, there's two things to this video. First, if you watch Andre and question my sanity, character, and lack of complete homophobia, which would be kind of weird, skip to the time that I put in the description because you might find it interesting and should probably watch it before the rest of the video. Not that I trust you will watch it, but if you do, pause the video immediately, and for the rest, well, there is no for the rest. Also, because I'm sure some people are going to accuse, no, I'm not a homophobe, I have nothing against gays that I don't have against other people. Blah blah blah. I'm not even sure why I'm saying this, fuck it.
Hey kids! It is time for your semi-weekly dose of pure terminal cancer. In that sense, guess who's back?
Hi, mein Name ist André und ich bin überzeugter Feminist, deswegen kenne ich auch den ganzen antifeministischen Bullshit, den man tagtäglich von heterosexuellen weißen Cis-Boys hört, die sich ausnahmsweise auch mal diskriminiert fühlen wollen.
That's right. André. You know, I'm pretty sure I could do a response to pretty much every single video he has put out on politics. This one is titled Wie unterstütze ich die LGBT-Community, ohne ein Arschloch zu sein? Or how do I support the LGBT community without being an asshole, in English. Following his advice, however, it seems pretty much impossible to do so, and if you want to know why, and trust me you don't, enjoy watching me once again struggle with the horror that is one of his videos. He actually recently put out another video about a related topic when I was busy making this one. I apologize. Seriously though, look at the fucking length of that video. I'm unsure if I'm ever going to do a response to that one, I barely made it through this. But still, have fun watching me suffer and gathering money for a chemotherapy, because here we really have reached the terminal stage.
Hey ihr schönen Menschen.
Stop. What is that? What is this doing here? This faggot hates fascists. Alright. Great. No, seriously, what is this about? I thought this video was about LGBT activism, so what the hell is this here for? Is this supposed to tell us that fascism is not a good thing? Thanks, Andre, what a surprise. I would have never guessed that the people which would have me gassed aren't that likable. Fucking hell. But don't get me wrong, I know what this is about. In German television, especially in public broadcasting, they have the habit of putting some text into the visuals whenever someone is shown, which often contain the person's name, age, and occupation. So this little banner down there is intended as a sort of parody on that. Now, that would be all cute and shit if it wasn't for the fact that any unoriginal hack in German media has already parodied it. It's been going on for years, and Andre himself has done it so often, and usually so fucking boringly, that his performance of his tired, not that funny in the first place joke was already so high in numbers that it would have been enough to beat any original joke to death.
Im letzten Jahr habe ich gelernt, nicht mehr total apologetisch mit meiner sexuellen Orientierung umzugehen, sondern viel selbstbewusster dabei zu sein. Dabei ist mir auch bewusst geworden, dass nicht jeder, der vorgibt, der LGBT-Community helfen zu wollen, das auch wirklich tut, sondern vielleicht sogar Schaden damit anrichtet. Manchmal vielleicht einfach, weil man es nicht besser weiß, viele aber auch, weil es für sie nur ein Modeaccessoire ist, um zu zeigen, wie progressiv man doch ist. Ganz ehrlich, auf solche Leute können wir verzichten. Wenn deine Intention aber darüber hinausgehen, ein kleines Regenbogen-Profilbildchen zu tragen, um zu zeigen, wie fortschrittlich du bist, dann kannst du aus diesem Video vielleicht sogar etwas mitnehmen.
Alright, the real suffering begins. I want you to keep this video as a well-kept memory, because it will serve you well as a field guide on what to look out for in regards to pure, rabid tribalism, narcissism, and histrionics. You will not believe the kind of social incompetence this guy is going to show throughout the video. This is really just a truly tiny bit of foreshadowing. You see, what this is supposed to be is some sort of education, and I can only say that in the loosest possible sense, for people who want to be allies, which, as far as I know, is pretty much like a non-minority activist for minority rights or something like that. And if you haven't figured it out yet, he also considers himself to be an authority on how to do very serious LGBT activism and some sort of spokesperson for the German LGBT community. And given his subscriber count, which should terrify all of you given this is a purely German channel and there aren't even remotely as many German speakers as there are English speakers, he might very well be one. Which also should terrify all of you. So, since we got the flamboyant ambassador of Deliver Lawlesston right before us, let's listen to what he advocates to make sure that LGBTs get their rights by means of very serious activism.
Der für mich wichtigste und essentiellste Punkt ist dabei, so hart wie es erstmal auch klingen mag, shut up and listen. Als Menschen sind wir natürlich empathische Wesen, die bis zu einem gewissen Punkt nachfühlen können, wie sich Homophobie deutlich macht und sich auch dagegen aussprechen können. Wir müssen niemanden kennen, der queer ist, um zu wissen, dass es vielleicht nicht ganz so cool ist, Menschen aufgrund ihrer sexuellen Orientierung zusammenzuschlagen oder ihnen aus selbigen Gründen Rechte zu entziehen. Aber diese Empathie, die reicht eben nur bis zu einem gewissen Punkt.
Shut up and listen. Where have I heard something like that before?
Nah. Can't remember. You will get throughout the video, however, the feeling that Andre himself isn't too good when it comes to empathy or, well, irony. But we're about to get to that.
Was LGBTs wirklich so erleben, das weißt du nur, wenn du in ihrer Haut gesteckt hast, also es ist da wichtig, auch einfach mal zuzuhören. Erst dann lernt man wirklich zu verstehen, wieso es Safe Spaces wie CSDs, Gay Clubs und Gay Bars braucht. Erst dann lernt man zu verstehen, wie subtile Homophobie funktioniert und welche Auswirkungen sie hat. Und erst dann merkt man, wie sich sowas im Alltag deutlich macht.
I find this statement odd. Now, as far as I'm concerned, isn't a safe space a place you can go to express yourself or to feel safe? Like, I can see the point of clubs and bars for that purpose, at least in a sexual sense, but most gay pride events are public. And if you are afraid of being fucked over for being gay, isn't it pretty much the worst possible choice to visit an event that is specifically about visibility? I mean, how would you express yourself in any meaningful way as a member of a crowd? And if you had to be afraid of something, there's always tons of cameras around which even then could record you. The only people there who are actually expressing themselves are the participants, and unless you are independent and live in a safe area, that is really the last thing you should do. But then again, if your surroundings are safe, what again do you need a safe space for? I don't get it. Then again, his effort to explain it in his video on the topic, and yes, he did a video on the topic to my deepest dismay, is awful. So it's no wonder I don't.
Das sind alles so Dinge, die dir erst richtig bewusst werden, wenn du selber queer bist. Und wenn du glaubst, irgendwas davon sei total übertrieben, gar nicht so schlimm oder ja überhaupt keine Homo- oder Transphobie, dann vertrau uns. Wir wissen es wahrscheinlich besser als du. Wir leben mit dem Scheiß. Trotzdem zählt die Erfahrung des Einzelnen genauso sehr wie die von jedem anderen in der Queer-Community. Dein Quoten-Homo-Freund, der das alles gar nicht so schlimm findet, ist also kein Freifahrtschein für Homophobie.
In other words, don't complain about something. You are not that thing, therefore you are not qualified to talk about it. Does this remind anyone else of religious apologists who say, "Oh, how can you understand my religion? You are not part of it." This is a cult recruitment video. This is gaytology. Someday this man will appear in the news for telling a bunch of jizz-covered guys in ass-free robes that they should drink poisoned Kool-Aid. But you know, Andre, I actually got a friend who lives in a homophobic household in a fascist country, and by that merit faces actual oppression and a risk of dying. And he often expressed his disgust at people like you and the modern gay movement. To him, you're fucking degenerates. But continue. I love to be lectured about token homosexuality by a guy who wears his own sexuality like a handbag.
Danach ist es wichtig, sich selber bewusst zu machen, welche Position man in der Gesellschaft hat, die andere aber nicht haben. Oder, um es in ganz bösen Worten zu sagen, man muss sich seiner Straight Privileges bewusst sein. Privilegiert zu sein macht dich nicht per se zu einem schlechten Menschen, das sind wir alle irgendwie. Man kann auf die eine Weise privilegiert sein und auf die andere auch gleichzeitig wieder unterdrückt. Wichtig ist es, dass wir daran arbeiten.
Andre, you are not oppressed. Perhaps annoyed, exploited, insulted and offended, perhaps condescended to or fucked by our political class as it is the case with everyone else. You are somewhat discriminated against, but you are not oppressed. But just for shits and giggles, a little presentation. This is what oppression looks like. This is what oppression looks like. This is what oppression looks like. This is what a spoiled brat who revels in his broadcasted ego trip looks like.
Und dass uns keine Industrie mehr vorschreibt, welche Produkte denn für unser Geschlecht geeignet sind und welche nicht. Ich hab verfickt nochmal auch das Recht, nach dem Duschen wie ein Obstsalat zu riechen.
You will notice certain differences.
Zum Beispiel musst du dich niemals für deine sexuelle Orientierung rechtfertigen oder legitimieren. Dein Recht auf Ehe und Familie wird auch niemals in Frage gestellt werden. Du musst keine Angst vor Kündigung, Gewalt oder Ausschluss aufgrund deiner sexuellen Orientierung haben oder davor, wie du in den Medien repräsentiert wirst.
Okay, how again are gays represented in media? Like this, right? Isn't it so? Actually, no, it's not the case. They're not. They are nowadays mostly represented in the entertainment industry like this.
Let me explain the rules of the boat. Rule number 1, it's my boat. Rule number 2, it is my boat. And if there remains any confusion about rules 1 and 2, I offer rule number 3. It's my goddamn boat.
There would be no Air Nation without Avatar Korra. She opened the portals and somehow the world began anew for us. And she was even willing to lay down her own life in order to protect ours.
The stereotypical portrayal of LGBTs is mostly done and sustained by LGBTs, gay rights activists, and a lot of LGBT celebrities. And if you really lack the ability to understand why there is still so much representation like this around, why this kind of behavior is fucking retarded, and I know you don't because I watched your video on it, and why it is massively counterproductive for this declared purpose. You got massive fucking problems. You know how representation would actually change more effectively? By stopping to treat all of this like a show whenever there is the opportunity.
Dafür muss ich mir als Cis-Mann niemals Gedanken darum machen, absichtlich misgendert zu werden oder dass
Misgendered.
jemand meinen Namen oder meine
Horror.
Geschlechtsidentität verleugnet. Ich muss keine Angst davor haben, von geschlechterspezifischen Events ausgeschlossen zu werden, und die Wahrscheinlichkeit, dass ich Gewalt und Mord in der Öffentlichkeit erfahre, die ist auch wesentlich geringer. Nur mal ein paar Beispiele zu nennen, das könnte man jetzt noch ewig fortfahren. Und das sind in der Tat alles richtig tolle Vorteile, aber wäre es nicht toll, wenn die für uns alle gelten würden? Natürlich, dafür muss man aber erstmal ein Bewusstsein schaffen und weiter daran arbeiten. Wenn man sich aber schon hinstellt und sagt, la, ich will von Privilegien gar nichts hören, dann wird das nichts.
The general silliness underlying some of these problems and the delusion of terms aside, how exactly do you intend to do that? Do you understand that the advantage of being less threatened by violence compared to someone else can pretty much by definition not be universalized? Are you aware that you will never be able to equalize these statistics even roughly to the same level, at least given your passiveness in regards to the ideological origin of a lot of this violence, unless you shake hands with Orwell's worst nightmares? Then again, as your knee-jerk apologia for religious lunacy and your hyper-narcissism have proven, you probably would be depraved enough for that.
Schließlich sind Privilegien und Unterdrückung keine natürliche Sache. Die sind von Menschen gemacht und wir werden damit sozialisiert. Deswegen halten wir vieles erstmal für normal und geben das auch so weiter, bis sich dann mal einer hinstellt, das hinterfragt und sagt, irgendwie ist das doch gar nicht so natürlich.
Humans are social. We have a biologically predetermined need for social interaction. After your, oh, it's just socialized idea, there's pretty much no such thing as natural, because almost all of our behavioral patterns, and by extension hierarchies, are in one way or another socialized. Also, who gives a shit if it is natural? Ebola is natural. AIDS is natural. Cancer is natural. Okay, given this video, it might be also socialized.
Und wenn du dich jetzt fragst, was die Queer-Community denn noch so alles braucht, dann frag sie doch einfach, verdammt. Ich finde das immer so irrwitzig, wenn diese Fake-Allies sich da hinstellen und sagen, wie pro-LGBT sie doch sind, dann aber zum Beispiel meinen, queere Menschen würden keine Ehe für alle brauchen. Sorry, aber dann unterstützt du die LGBT-Community nicht, sondern bist einfach nur ein homophobes Arschloch.
I hate to break it to you, but no, gay marriage is not needed. Tell me one thing of vital importance that it is needed for except to stop people from complaining. You don't die if you don't get it, you don't suffer injuries, you don't get illnesses, society doesn't break down without it. You don't need it. But notice how one-dimensional his thinking is. If you don't think it is important, then you can by definition not support the LGBT community, because apparently that is too reprehensible. This is so fucking tribal, it's amazing to me.
Schlimmer noch, du unterdrückst die LGBT-Community damit sogar, indem du deine Position als die der gesamten LGBT-Community darstellst.
It is oppression to proclaim yourself a spokesperson for a group while not being one. Fuck my life, that's retarded.
Du wirst immer auf Queers treffen, die die Ehe für alle nicht so wichtig halten, denen das Adoptionsrecht egal ist und vielleicht sogar das Steuerrecht, die das Glück hatten, niemals Gewalt deswegen zu erfahren und das deswegen nicht für ein Problem halten. Aber für den Rest der Community ist es eben immer noch ein gottverdammtes Problem. Es gibt echt genug Leute, die über uns reden, als seien wir Tiere, die sich selber nicht artikulieren könnten. Wir brauchen nicht noch mehr Wölfe im Schafspelz.
You are certainly not helping that, as your immense skills at diplomacy demonstrate. Don't consider gay marriage to be important? Well, you're an asshole. Quite ironic this is, given that there already is gay marriage in Germany. Now it is not called marriage, but it is de facto gay marriage. And that is something that I find interesting, that there seems to be a bit of a disconnect in the minds of people which in Germany on the one side advocate for gay marriage by defining it as a union between two people instead of between one man and one woman, and on the other hand say there isn't gay marriage despite that there is a union that fits that description. But this very definition would mean that there is gay marriage, and there is, thereby, gay marriage. Now, legally they are, of course, different, and on many accounts on which they should be the same, they are not the same, but it still is marriage.
Was wir brauchen, sind Leute, die mit und für uns sprechen und uns helfen, eine lautere Stimme zu bekommen.
Job requirements are silly dancing skills and suffering through the experience of standing behind a guy, well, somewhat, singing terrible, cheesy pop songs to an unwilling audience.
Der nächste Part kann etwas ermüdend sein, ist aber definitiv einer der wichtigsten. Allies kennen keine Pause, wenn es darum geht, Diskriminierung gegenüberzutreten. Ich weiß, es kann manchmal echt anstrengend sein, sich mit diesem homophoben Onkel dritten Grades herumzuschlagen oder mit der transphoben Schwiegermutter, aber genau in solchen Fällen ist es wirklich entscheidend. Außerdem ist es gerade dann ein riesiger Akt von Solidarität, weil queere Menschen sich auch nicht einfach von Homo- und Transphobie zurückziehen können und du machst das dann auch irgendwie zu deiner Sache, wenn du dich dann auch nicht zurückziehst, obwohl du es eigentlich könntest. Homo- und Transphobie nur dann anzuprangern, wenn es gerade bequem ist und man keine Widerrede zu erwarten hat, ist ja auch wieder so ein Kuschelaktivismus. Das ist wie mit diesen kleinen Regenbogen-Profilbildchen, die man sich mal kurz reinmacht, um allen deutlich zu zeigen, wie weltoffen und fortschrittlich man doch ist. Oder, um es mal mit ganz, ganz harten Worten zu sagen, wer Homophobie nicht da entgegentritt, wo sie entsteht, der ist Mitteil des Problems und macht sich mitverantwortlich.
Okay, you know, this was actually the part that I anticipated the most, because he's such an unbelievable, arrogant hypocrite about this. You see, directly after the Orlando attack, you know, when some Islamic lunatic went out to shoot a gay nightclub, the response of this piece of useless human flesh was to upload a video with the title, "It was homophobia, not Islamism," in which he relativized the role of his nutjob's ideology to the point of complete denial. Pay attention here to the fact that he didn't simply say it wasn't Islam. He said it wasn't Islamism. So he even went so far to say that no, not just Islam didn't have anything to do with it, even Islamism, which is in common language use a description for radical Islam, wasn't at fault here. He actively denied that there is any connection to Islam in it. Meanwhile, there were tens of millions in the Islamic world who approved of this behavior, and first and foremost, the clerics. And now this guy, with his complete lack of any sort of principle, comes up here and tells people that we must fight homophobia where it comes into existence, and he displays arrogance undeserved for an Islamophile who spends his time feeding his overgrown ego by exploiting the adolescent angst of depressed teenagers.
Und dazu gehört für mich auch die Identität anderer Menschen zu respektieren. Gerade wenn es um sowas wie Androgynität oder Geschlechtsidentitäten geht. Ich kann wirklich gut auf Unterstützung von Leuten verzichten, die einem noch diktieren wollen, wie man denn jetzt so richtig schwul sein darf. Ich meine nicht mal, dass du alles direkt verstehen musst. Das kann manchmal alles ziemlich verwirrend sein, das verstehe ich. Das ist aber kein Grund dafür, direkt respektlos zu werden.
Just because people don't agree with something doesn't mean that they don't understand it. It might very well be that you are just talking complete and utter shit.
Als ich das erste Mal mit Menschen konfrontiert wurde, die sich als genderqueer, pansexuell oder trans einordnen, da habe ich auch nicht alles auf Anhieb verstanden. Also habe ich zugehört und nachgefragt und versucht, die Dinge zu erfahren, die für mich als Freund dieser Person oder auch nur als ein Bekannter jetzt wichtig sein können.
Okay, since we are supposed to ask questions, have you ever asked, why should we even speak in terms of gender when addressing someone? Is that a question that has ever crossed your mind? Well, probably not.
Dann habe ich das respektiert und getan, was richtig ist. Das alles wirklich vollständig zu verstehen, das kam dann einfach mit der Zeit. Zum einen durch Zuhören, aber auch dadurch Fehler zu machen, aufgeklärt zu werden und mich dann für diese Fehler auch zu entschuldigen.
No, with time clearly did not come understanding. I mean, you barely understand the sentences you're speaking, because otherwise you probably would die from an overdose of embarrassment. How about when you're already at it, you apologize for distracting from the dangers of theocracy or glorifying mental illness or other shit like that, you sycophant? How about that?
Fehler sind aber eigentlich ein echt gutes Thema, wenn wir einmal dabei sind. Die wird man nämlich immer wieder machen. Ich glaube, es ist praktisch unmöglich, wirklich alle Fehler zu vermeiden. Rassismus, Homophobie, Transphobie, Diskriminierung generell, das sind alles Dinge, die nicht in unserer Natur liegen, aber wir wurden damit sozialisiert.
Oh, no, 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 dude, no. Discrimination is perhaps one of the most natural parts of our behavior. We got a brain area pretty much dedicated to it. It's called the amygdala, and one of its main functions is hostility and in-group out-group behavior. There's a part of our anatomy specifically related to hatred. How's that for nature?
Die sind dann erstmal in unserem Kopf drin und wir halten sie für normal und geben sie auch so weiter, bis einer in diese Linie anfängt, sie zu hinterfragen. Fehler können dabei ein wichtiger Schritt sein, weil diese Fehler zu machen und dann auch darauf hingewiesen zu werden, kann der erste wichtige Schritt zur großen Erkenntnis sein. Das Wichtige ist dabei dann einfach zu diesem Fehler zu stehen und auch sagen zu können, okay, sorry, ich habe einen Fehler gemacht, es tut mir leid, wenn sich jemand davon verletzt gefühlt hat, ich werde daraus lernen.
No. How about I tell the people which want to make it a social imperative that I use their fantasy pronouns or base my vocabulary on some batshit sociological doctrine that I don't believe in, instead that they are not so important that their neuroses impose any sort of imperative on me, or anyone else for that matter, and ask them kindly, but firmly, to back off.
Das muss selbst ich auch heute noch manchmal. Wirklich für ein Arschloch halte ich dich nur dann, wenn du dann Queers noch erklären willst, das sei ja gar nicht homo oder transphob oder sogar Leute in Schutz nimmst, die solche Dinge äußern, obwohl du ja so tolerant bist. Und mit in Schutz nehmen meine ich dabei nicht, ihre Lernfähigkeit zu betonen, das kann man ja gerne machen, sondern wirklich gezielt diese Aussagen, die sie treffen, zu entschuldigen. Also ich erwarte ja von meinen Freunden, dass sie da echt ehrlich mit mir sind und mich auf sowas auch hinweisen. Aber wie auch immer, nur mit Menschen aus der Queer-Community zu reden, ist dabei natürlich auch keine Lösung. Wir wissen, wer wir sind und wir wissen, was wir wollen und was wir brauchen. Wichtig ist es, die Ideen jetzt nach außen zu tragen. Wir als Queer-Community sind dabei praktisch in einer Lehrfunktion. Du lernst von uns, wie das queere Leben funktioniert und erfährst auch eine neue Perspektive, die du vorher nur in Ansätzen hättest nachfühlen können.
This video demonstrates that whatever one can say about him, you can't say he knows what he needs nor what the people he claims to represent need. Merely his remarks on how to be an activist for this cause demonstrate really beyond any shadow of a doubt that he has no clue about what they need. Not politically, not psychologically. It is truly striking to me how little he understands of it. But that aside for the moment, remember his remark on wolves in sheep's clothing and understand the implication of him saying, we know what we want and need. That bit about wolves was basically a quasi-excommunication and attempt to cleanse his side of heretics. You see, what he's trying to do here is to get rid of criticism in his own ranks, and you can see that he is trying to set up a totalizing system. First he demonizes the active opposition by proclaiming them homophobic assholes. Then he excludes the mild-mannered skeptics from the topic by proclaiming that you can only really talk about these issues if you are LGBT yourself. And then he excommunicates the heretics within the LGBT community. The people who have seen this stuff and don't buy into it simply didn't understand it. The point of this is to have an interest group with specific ideological tendencies within the LGBT community, which is supposed to be the one true representative of the community. In the end, given his criteria for exclusion, there can only be support for the goals he and his ideological brethren approved of. Or, in other words, they are the defenders of the one true faith.
Und sicher ist dabei auch nicht immer alles total ernst. Ich glaube, in einem Umfeld zu sein, was schon aufgrund einer sozial geformten Identität dazu gezwungen ist, frei und selbstbestimmt zu leben, das kann auch manchmal ziemlich entspannt für den eigenen Horizont sein.
Forced socially formed identity, living self-determined. Forced socially formed identity, living self-determined. Forced socially formed identity, living self-determined. The number 22 comes to my mind.
Danach ist es dann trotzdem wichtig, sich nicht in diese Kreise zurückzuziehen, sondern das, was du gelernt hast, auch nach außen zu tragen, die neuen Perspektiven anderen Leuten zu erzählen, immer mit Blick darauf, wo du es selber gelernt hast und so Schritt für Schritt eine Veränderung zu bewirken. Das ist manchmal ermüdend und anstrengend, bringt die Queer-Community aber einen ganzen Schritt weiter Richtung Inklusion. Und wenn du dann tatsächlich mal eine Auszeit brauchst, dann bist du, glaube ich, in queeren Kreisen dann auch immer herzlich willkommen.
In other words, Gatology needs more members. Seriously, now this guy has so clearly no fucking clue on how to change society. I could change society better if I bothered with it. And had such a range. But this guy couldn't even change his opinions.
Aber bitte, mach Straight Ally zu sein nicht zu deiner Identität. Der LGBT-Community fehlt es an Sichtbarkeit und sich als Ally da in den Vordergrund zu rücken, verlagert die Aufmerksamkeit auf dich anstatt auf die Queer-Community. Ich sehe zum Beispiel immer mal wieder Leute, die T-Shirts tragen, auf denen sowas wie Straight Ally steht. Dann liegt der Fokus aber nicht mehr auf der LGBT-Community.
Fucking hell. Okay, evidence, please. So incredibly retarded to me, I'm not going to accept it without some sort of backup. T-shirts do not keep the attention. Even if they get attention for a moment, there must be something to keep it, and unless the person that wears the t-shirt is just remotely interesting, they, and the t-shirt, are not going to be in the focus for more than a second. And if you really believe that this is going to be a legitimate distraction from the issues at hand, you're a nut. You're absolutely bonkers.
Sondern darauf, dir für deine Fürsorglichkeit selber mal richtig auf die Schulter zu klopfen.
Stop here. Look at his face. Look at his mannerisms. Look at his attitude. Look at it.
Say, could you come up with anything that would demonstrate more to you that the person before you is a complete asshole without any sort of redeeming features than what we have just witnessed? Now don't get me wrong, I'm not calling him an asshole as I'm legally inclined not to call him an asshole, but if it would be legal to call him an asshole, I am fairly certain that I couldn't come up with a better description. That's an asshole expression right there.
Da hat es deutlich mehr Stärke, ein Pro-LGBT-Shirt zu tragen, auf dem kein Ally groß in den Vordergrund gezogen wird. Wie zum Beispiel dieses Schwuchtelsexuell-Shirt, nur echt aus 100% Tränen von gekränkten Männeregos, Link auf dem i. Genauso aber auch in Konversation. Niemand braucht ein riesiges Straight Ally in der Twitter-Bio stehen haben oder muss jeden Satz mit "Ich als Straight Ally denke ja" beginnen. Es reicht, seine Unterstützung für die LGBT-Community deutlich zu machen. Alles andere verrückt nur den Fokus und schadet der Sache mehr, als dass es hilft.
Speak with and for us. Well, I think, yeah, that's enough. How does this clown convince anyone to support him? Like, I know that the people supporting him are mostly brain-dead teenagers looking for a point of orientation for the span of their obviously very desperate puberty. But hell, how did they end up with this guy? Is there actual examples of people basing their rhetoric noticeably on what stands in their Twitter bio? Could we get some evidence? Could we get evidence that it moves away the focus and does damage? Or even better, could we get anything?
Und als kleinen, aber nicht weniger wichtigen Abschluss, erwarte niemals eine Entschuldigung dafür, dass wir sind, wer wir sind, oder ein dankendes Schulterklopfen für deine tolle Akzeptanz.
Yes, don't expect gratitude. I mean, engage in activism that costs you money, time, if you're anyhow self-aware, your self-respect, and if you're obnoxious, perhaps your job, but don't expect thanks. I wonder, could there be a more obvious display of parasitism? Andre, especially you, should apologize for who you are. With your general lack of competence, decency, agreeableness, usefulness, and whatever else would stop someone from giving you your well-deserved punch in the face, there's not much else you have to contribute to humanity, if anything.
Ich habe ehrlich gesagt schon lange zu viel davon, mich ständig für meine sexuelle Orientierung zu erklären und legitimieren. Lieber lutsche ich Schwänze, als weiterhin gekränkten Heteros zu erklären, wieso ich denn Schwänze lutsche. Ein Danke dagegen ist sicher nett, aber ich klopfe niemandem dafür auf die Schulter, ein schönes Regenbogenbildchen zu haben oder Akzeptanz zu zeigen. Das erachte ich nämlich für selbstverständlich.
Wow. Consider it a given. Showing upset. Oh, fuck off, mate. The fact that people invest time just to support your interests should get you on your fucking knees with widely opened mouth. Nothing ever was a given. You are not entitled to anything, and you only get anything that you want in this regard because they show you goodwill. Because there's people which are interested in your well-being for one reason or another. Mostly an idealistic reason. The least thing you would do if you were smart, and I know you have your problems with that, would be to kiss the ground they are walking on. People, as a matter of fact, are greatly motivated by their egos. Without that, what exactly do you have to offer for them? The privilege of being welcomed by a community of ungrateful pricks? Association with you? The warm feeling of being used as a stepping stone by brats like you? Yeah, I'm sure that's going to make people do your bidding. Do you even Realpolitik? Unbelievable.
Und dennoch, danke an jeden, der sich wirklich für die LGBT-Community einsetzt. Man könnte es sich so einfach machen und einfach weggucken. Deswegen respektiere ich es sehr, wenn Leute sich einsetzen, mit und für uns reden, um uns eine lautere Stimme zu geben.
Any sane person who watches this shit and isn't already indoctrinated into this mode of thinking, despite that I almost dare not call it that, would turn away now. Ladies and gentlemen, I congratulate you. We have survived another one of Andre's spaz fits. You really couldn't imagine the amount of questions on my mind. Questions like, how do you fall for this? How pathetic a human being do you have to be to fall for this? Why did I do this? And what am I doing with my life? And many, many other questions of a sort. But anyway. Only to demonstrate just how much of a joke this guy is, I'm going to do what he just did, and do it better. To demonstrate that whatever he is trying to do, he who supposedly learned about this ally activist blah bullshit longer, is worse at it than me, someone who hardly gives a shit. So, here's V not sucking at the activism you lecture people about Starter Kit. Number 1. For starters, don't be an ungrateful little shit. Technically this should be common knowledge, but apparently it is not. So let me simply repeat what I said before, again. You want these people to help you, and that costs money, time and nerves. Least you can do is to be grateful that they try to further your neurosis-dependent comfort level basically for free. Number 2. Fucking learn how politics work. You will have trouble achieving anything if you try to repel people for basically nothing. For the most part, it is really about raw numbers. If you puritanically excommunicate people over nonsense, then don't wonder that you're not doing jack shit. Number 3. If you don't wish to be represented in a particular way, maybe try not to represent yourself in that particular way. I'm pretty sure for every gay artist and activist who isn't a badly composed firework of glitter glue and silly dresses, there's 5 who are. And it reflects poorly on your cognitive abilities not to understand why media representation of LGBTs often looks so fucking silly.
Actually, don't get me wrong, it isn't mostly. I mean, the activists still look like they're on a fucking carnival, but actually I can't really remember when I have last seen a stereotypical gay character with a lisp, for example. At least from a show or movie from the past 5 years. Number 4. If you want to stay with this kind of activism, get yourself a good spokesperson. Andre is not a good spokesperson. He doesn't do research and blindly repeats what he hears from others. He has obviously no idea about politics and, most importantly, is a complete narcissist for whom reality comes second behind his ideology. And his ideology, sadly, is where his misunderstanding of human politics comes from. Get yourself someone with charisma and intelligence, and if you can't, read a few books on epistemology and rhetoric and start doing videos on YouTube. Given what is currently available in Germany, it only can get better. Number 5. Try to be mature with your sexuality. I guess this counts as telling you how to be correctly gay. Kind of. Not at all. You know, technically there is no possibility on how to be correctly gay if we view gay simply as the notion of being attracted to members of the same sex, because then it is pretty much a binary thing. Either you are gay or you are not. When people question us, he phrases it, the act of telling someone to be correctly gay has, interestingly, not inherently anything to do with sexuality, at least not any more than it has to do with skin color or the shape of your, I don't know, arm or some shit like that. It hasn't even anything to do with how you express it. It has to do with how you act. The notion of it being a prescription for a way of being gay is an utter strawman. What is of relevance here is gay culture and the behaviors it spawns, and blah blah blah. What this boils down to is pretty much similar to the third point. If sexuality is not a determinant of your virtue, your competency, or your capability of being a good spouse, parent, person, or just life form, then maybe ask yourself if you really want to be represented by people like this fucking clown. Remember that it is you who chooses your representation. You should remember, always remember, to choose it carefully. Number 6. Get yourself Sun Tzu's The Art of War and Edward Bernays' Propaganda. If you want to change something, you don't scurry around oversized clown cars in ridiculous outfits. You exert pressure. It actually confuses me how someone can be so unbelievably incompetent to have better arguments in the debate, vast support from the populace, and still not force the people in power into changing the legal status on a matter as meaningless to them as gay marriage. It is fucking absurd to me. And even more absurd it is to me that people still don't have it and don't get that it might be time for a paradigm change. Because doing the same thing for about 10 years is a pretty good way of finding out that it doesn't work like this. Acknowledge it. Number 7. Stop being entitled. The world is not your servant and good things don't come on their own. Move your ass. Don't expect the world to do it for you. Number 8. Understand that you are not fucking oppressed. No, a higher rate of violence does not automatically constitute oppression as long as there's no effort by dominant powers in society to cause or sustain it. Stop proposing this. There's plenty of shit that you can complain about. The fact that the state is making pretty much arbitrary distinctions like this is still a fucking disaster and more than enough something that you can make your case with. Number 9. Get polemicists. Seriously, get yourself some smartass who knows how to properly write polemics. Like me, for example. For the low price of 400 euros or some shit like that, I'll give certain retarded political groups the lampshaded middle finger. Or something. Number 10. Understand that Abrahamic religion is not your friend, and you cannot be a believer in the Abrahamic ideals, whatever major scripture you are following, and a practicing homosexual. Well, unless you're a loon. It should be self-explanatory that totalitarian systems, which are always morally supremacist in nature, are not that benevolent towards ideas and lifestyles deviating from their ludicrous prescriptions. It's not, apparently. We are that far down the rabbit hole that it is not. We do, by the way. But anyway, that's it. Rejoice, for you finished this shit show. Cheers.